So we are joined by a very interesting guest. I've met this individual at a quite fun event. Shout out to Yuri. And for some reason, every time she pops up on my feed, there's just another sense of awe and amazement, if you will.
Oh, I love that.
So without further ado, Doctor, could you introduce yourself?
I certainly can. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm so excited, and I feel likewise about you. There's always some fun thing that I'm seeing you doing, attending, being wherever, whatever. My name is now and forevermore Dr. Rachel Anevski. It is a long time coming, but I have been hanging out and working with CPAs for the last 20 years. I own a little company called Matters of Management. It is the acronym for MOM, although there's nothing to do with moms at all. We hang out with CPAs and their clients. We do a couple of things. Primarily here in this space, I am a CPA consultant. I'm a leadership consultant, and I'm certified in human resources. So that's really kind of where I spend my time. Most recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, I have had the absolute privilege to speak across the country at a variety of different CPA, accounting, and finance organizations and conventions. Lots of fun. CPAs drink really well, and so we have a good time together. And I have just published my second book. The first one, Accounting for Times, did rather well. And this one, fingers crossed, train your successor.
That's something I definitely want to delve into because one of the things that I have felt through the majority of my career, and for me, there's always a parallel between, say, like parenthood, mentorship, and leadership, right? If you want to put it all in one like general bucket, is as I went through a lot of corporate life, there was a sense of depending on which industry you're in. Like certain industries, it's almost like a timed metric, right? Like, hey, you're here for a year. Generally speaking, as long as you're not like terrible at your job, you're gonna get bumped. You're gonna get bumped. You're gonna get bumped. But then, at some point, there is an issue that we've typically found, not everywhere, obviously, where there's a failure in leadership. Where I think sometimes there's a conflation between time in the company and maybe technical skill sets and leadership roles, right? And I think there are issues there when there is a breakdown between. Well, this is my personal take, obviously, where there's a breakdown in terms of leadership skills and like a degradation of culture within an office, a department, and things of that nature. Um, and is there anything from that little soapbox moment that we can pull from?
So I've seen it over and over in different iterations of where a business is in their business cycle as well as where the economy is. And so for me, it's really simple. Culture and leadership go together when there's money being invested, time and energy being invested in developing your people. So number one, you have to have a carve out of intentional budgeting dollars and intentional programming to then affect your people. So if a company doesn't allocate that, and that's culture, right? That's we believe in our people. We want to infuse education in them. We want to help them be successful, learn more, become leaders, have a mentor program. All of those things are intentional, or they should be intentional, and that's what's tied to culture. But all of that is only possible if we're in an economy that supports that environment, and you have organizational leadership that is aligned in how they want to address their people. So I think if you're working in an organization and you are feeling like they don't care about the employees, they don't necessarily want to really see me be successful here, you have to look at what the world looks like around it and who the leadership is and what their values are. So to your point, yeah, it does all kind of go together. Um, but I've seen it kind of circular. Yeah. Well, it goes in cycles. So right now, I think that most companies that want to be successful and want to stay independent without having to be purchased or merged or anything like that, they're doing a great job in learning what people need to be successful over the next, transitions in business.
I guess I'll take a couple steps back. In your viewpoint, what is it that makes a good leader or a culture of leadership, or like I kind of want to delve into that topic because everyone, not everyone, but oftentimes we hear, "Hey, I can't wait to be the boss." And for me personally, there was a line that someone told me is like, "Look, if you fully understand what your boss is doing, your boss, and you tell yourself, I have no interest in doing that job." Sometimes well, at the very least, re you should really give it some serious thought in terms of if this is the career track you want to take. But the second portion here is understand what is it that you like or dislike. Is it that, like, and sometimes it's a personality thing of like, hey, do you feel like you don't like this job because they're only focused on that, on taking advantage of the employees to hit these metrics so that they look good to their bosses, or is it more of like I just don't like the work, right? Like there's a whole gamut, but I digress.
That's kind of a loaded question, right? So I the first thing is you need to actually want to lead, right? So that's a conscious decision. Oftentimes people are put in a position of leadership without understanding the responsibility. It's kind of like the whole Spider-Man mentality, right? So I think that's an important piece of it. But also you have to have people who are willing to follow you, right? So if you're in a position of authority and no one is there doing the work voluntarily for you, then you are not a good leader, right? It requires that. I also think that leadership um, is is a constant investment in continuous learning for yourself. Um, and there's so many different types of leadership: empathetic leadership, transformational leadership, transactional leadership. I mean, you can, people have called leaders a variety of different things, but for me, it's, you have a purpose, and that purpose should be to help other people succeed. And if you are successful at that, then you are in ways a good leader. Um, and it means that you're continuing your learning, you're investing in understanding how your people respond to you. Um, Oftentimes I ask leaders, like, if they were to describe their people to me, could they describe how their people learned best? And I think that that's a telltale sign of a good leader, is that they understand that everybody is different, their team is unique and different, and that they have a unique way of kind of ebbing and flowing their own ways and their own leadership style to be most effective to their people. That's a strong leader. So, hmm,
If I were to put this in an overgeneralized, say, paradigm, I think many of us, not all, grew up with this idea that the leader leads the charge and tells the employees what to do, and right, and there's that, there's almost like a pedestal effect there, as opposed to, for me, there's,
boss, right? That's a boss, not the leader.
love that you said that, because for me there is the other notion that a leader is someone who will instill growth, right? And I know I understand there's gonna be folks who say this sounds very sisi fufu and very woo woo about.
What you're saying is the development of others and of themselves. It's an evolutionary process. It's not a delegation process. That's why I said, that's the boss, right? The boss will just say, "Here, go do it." A leader wants to hear and evaluate all of what's best, all of get everyone involved. A leader will see that there are people on their team that might not be capable of giving responses in a public forum. Maybe they need some time to go back and think about it a little while and then present their ideas or opportunities. So a leader will take all of those things into consideration. They spend the time to understand. A boss will just be, go go go.
just to the next point, right? If you are nurturing and grow, helping your team grow, right? Obviously, there are going to be folks that, again, I'm not saying right, wrong. In this particular case, I'm just gonna say I'm agnostic, right? It is what it is. There may be a mindset of like, hey, why would I want to essentially train people who might want to replace me? And what would you say to something like that?
If you're not, well, I think a lot of people are afraid to train someone to be better than them, right? A lot of people are afraid to delegate tasks to someone that might do it quicker than them. A lot of people are afraid to give opportunity to others, um, in the event that they might find the flaws in ourselves, right? So that's all ego. And that's all it is. It's a matter of, it's the imposter syndrome at its best at work. Um, Confidence is key to be able to be successful. It's one of those key attributes. And so, yeah, I think that so many people are plagued with this inability to find success in building somebody else up. We see this and um, we see this in the female executive community, oftentimes, because when you ask most successful women how they got here, 90% of them will say it was a male leader that helped them up. It's almost like queen bee syndrome. Women oftentimes will not lower a hand and raise up another woman for fear that you know, there can only be one queen bee, right? So we see this over and over and over again. It's behavior, and it's behavior that is systemic and generational and organizational. And so I think that it's important to have a flexible mindset to then say we really need to celebrate people who are able to bring others along. I mean, the truth of the matter is the more people that you get involved in doing the work that you are doing every day, the more it frees you up to do more meaningful work. And this is what we're seeing in communities in terms of advisory. Advisory is more meaningful work instead of what's happening with PE and AI. AI is taking care of a lot of those tasks, and so in a way, it's eliminating that delegation of another person, because now we're delegating to a computer. Right.
There is something that you harped in on. It was, there are a lot of factors that lead folks to make decisions one way or another. And there is a need, I feel, to your point, to be cognizant of, hey, like, why am I doing that? Is it because I feel like my ego is threatened? Or is it truly a threat? Like, is someone like somehow maliciously trying to come after my seat in a way that is not cool, right? Like whether it's unethical or whether it's just like just mean, right? Even, like I want to say it. Sometimes just some people are just jerks, man. Like, and I get that, I get it. Um, but I think it is interesting that sometimes there is a narrative, whether true or not true. I don't. For me, like I can't speak to that, right? But regardless, there is for me an internal dialogue of okay, can it be true? Yes, that people are going to come after me, and there may be a famine coming, right? But on the other side of that is, does that mean that I can and should and will get better so that like that's I mean for me that's been my drive of like
Should challenge you, right? It should. The response to teaching someone in a way that is non-threatening should challenge you. It should challenge you to be better, to hone in on your skills, to develop more skills, to continue evolving. But a lot of people get complacent, and then fear sets in, and it's like the change continuum, right? So we don't want to change. We don't want to have anyone take over for us because then it puts us out of our comfort zone. And especially in the CPA community, comfort is real nice. It's warm and happy here. So, to have to do new things becomes the challenge and scary, and gets us out of our comfort. Mm.
there's no secret that there has been a massive wave of private equity monies coming in, and even without PE, you have just mergers and acquisitions. Some of the big names have decided to merge as well, and there has been a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, right? uh, but there is obviously now going to be downstream effects, right? Whether it's different styles of leadership, different types of leaders, or just maybe whether it's organic or not, there's a change in the DNA or culture of how these companies will now operate, right? And could you help me navigate how that is kind of how it's navigating, well, how folks are navigating through it, and how you feel some of these issues could be ameliorated?
Also, new word for me. I love this. Yeah, no, it's great. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of halfway through this real big change, and what I think is so interesting uh, is the fractional um, in visibly the fractioning off of CPAs, right? So typically you have a fight or flight response or behavioral response, but this solopreneur practicum, I think is super cool. I think it has been the best response to what's happening in the CPA community. Having people decide like I want to be in charge of my own destiny, and taking it from there. That to me is like the coolest thing. I think that it didn't hurt our firms to get a little more corporate instead of family. Um, I one of the last lines in my book is, "Can we kindly put to forever death the statement of we've always done it this way." I'm I don't ever want to hear that again. I don't even want to hear me say it again. So I think that you could always look at things from two sides, right? What were the negatives? Or maybe three sides. What were the negatives from this experience? What were the positives from this experience? And what did we learn? So I think that, the negatives are that it created recognition in our communities that we're not great at business succession. So that's the first, that would be a negative. The positive is this, fractional solopreneurs that are living in destinies that are focused on their goals and their beliefs and what they want to do and bringing wealth to their families and doing it their way. I kind of love that. Um, and then, and the learning of how we can better lead for the future. So that's what I think is happening.
That's that's definitely that's no, that's a banger, because and look, we say I've said it till I was blue in the face, right? Again, maybe it's a little doomsday, crotchety old man on the lawn kind of thing, but it's like, look, understand when you're corporate, everyone is expendable, right? And that is not to say you should be emotional about it, and maybe this is just my technical CPA brain saying, hey, look, it is what it is. It's not a good or bad thing. Just understand, like, hey, this is a thing. And what really, for me in the past, has really bonded teams together was, like, forget the corporate portion of it. Understand the people that are shoulder to shoulder with you and that are moving this needle along, right? Because that ultimately is where our our bonds to a company typically tend to be. Like, hey, it's really not the the company. More times than not, obviously there's a select few who need that name, that like, hey, I made it to this company. But in my experience, a lot of times is like, look, it's always unfortunate when someone's let go and it's someone like in your team and you're like, oh, that sucks. But I'm like, look, it's corporate. That's a corporate decision. And likewise, if you see, like, I'm sure we've had happy hours with some of our colleagues or friends who are like, I hate my job. I'm doing all this and a third. And we realize, dude, you're the star player on that team. And I think we see it now where there's an opportunity in that if the culture doesn't make sense, so it's usually the star players who are going to just say, look, I actually can go wherever I want. I don't have to be here.
So isn't it important to be the second? So this is a lesson that has been both negative and positive in my life for the last 25 years. So if you are the star striker on a soccer team and you are second string, and that star striker is doing so good that the Akrons and the NC States want them, and that person leaves, then isn't that second string striker in a phenomenal position to move ahead, right? To have their time to shine. It's only when um it's only when you're as good as the first person that being the second person that never gets the chance is a bad thing, right? So I I love when people leave firms because I feel like it brings opportunity to that second string person. And if you utilize that opportunity, every time you see someone leave, to go and talk to their partner or go and talk to HR to say, hey, look, like what clients did that person have access to? What activities was that person doing that made them a superstar? Like, I'm ready, I'm in, put me in, coach. And people don't look at it that way. They're like, "Oh my god, someone's leaving. The culture here must be really terrible, or there's got to be something better across the street, or they might be getting more money and so I got to go. Now I'm thinking of leaving too instead of thinking of staying and succeeding and digging in and looking at opportunity. I don't know why people don't see it that way. It's huge opportunity.
That would say that is the better proactive approach in many cases, right? I mean,
That's how to better get ahead.
right, and
It's a
there's the for me that especially if there's wide variety of cultures, firms, sizes, industry. I get that, and there is an interesting dynamic there, right? Where usually there, inevitably that spot is going to get filled one way or another, right? And so
Mhm.
for me, it turns into I've been a part of a few places where there's like a mass exodus out, and there's
Mhm.
some industries that just if you don't understand that industry, you think there's like a flood coming, right? Like, but for
Yeah.
instance, if you are in the upper echelons of accounting, of consulting, they're like, dude, everyone in this office left. I'm like, yeah, this industry is very incestuous. Like, understand that, and it's not
Mhm.
necessarily
Mhm.
like you don't say, hey, five people left, and suddenly you think this office is garbage. No, it's just understand that before you start panicking, and to your point, like, hey, like
Mhm.
before you assume that everything's terrible, kick the tires a little bit, right? Because it might just turn out like, hey, look, they just happen to get a job offer that they couldn't refuse. But if you were vying for that next level up anyway, like why are you going to just immediately assume that the walls are crumbling down? And right, that is a good point. And I
Sometimes people leave and they are your barrier to success. So when they leave, that barrier disintegrates and you can step right in. So, it's just the way you have to view it.
from a leadership perspective, is there are there I don't want to call it hacks because I think that's kind of cringy, but are there things that can be managed on that leadership level so that there is that understanding of, hey, like, people are going to come and go, but that doesn't mean that you don't have, like, if anything, it does provide additional opportunities for you. Is there something that they could do proactively instead of saying, god, I hope someone steps up and like right?
Yeah, so pipeline, right? Pipeline is really important. Developing people is really important. Um, Again, I always think that coaching mindset is who do you have on deck? Who has the skill sets? It really is in terms of leadership more important to have people that are cross trained and available and interested and active and hungry for growth. And so that to me starts at the go. It starts at how we recruit and what we build internally. I remember being a young professional in HR and having a superstar leave the company. and calling my managing partner and saying, oh my God, like, what are we going to do now? How are we going to replace this unbelievable, highly technical, great leader in the company? I don't know how we're going to be able to afford to solicit and procure someone else to do the job. And my managing partner talked me off the ledge and said, this is going to happen so many times in your career, and we're going to make it through, and it's going to be a non-issue. And quite honestly, that person that I'm talking about is so highly successful today and has 25 jobs. So every job that he left, I'm sure every HR person was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Yeah. So look, it happens. And I think that you have to build future leaders to understand that these are opportunities for them. We don't tell that to people. Like, I mean, this may be the first time that you ever like saw it that way, but we have to share that information. We have to kind of open people's eyes to opportunity and to different perspectives. And and i i hope that we can do that by really developing people and caring for their futures.
I agree. And so I don't. Well, I don't. I have no idea how this is going to play out. But
Go ahead.
let's. I'm wondering if we could be a little tactical here now. So from if let's say you're a manager, senior manager, and whatever, right? Just anywhere that may be perceived as a managerial or leadership position. Are there certain things that, and I know the list could be endless, but are there some immediate things that come to mind in terms of, hey, like there are some red flags here that you would probably want to at the very least look into?
In terms of if they were showing up as not a leader.
It could be them as a leader, or are there things that I need both, right? Because I think they're both incredibly important. Either internally as a leader sitting in a leadership position, are there certain things that I should kind of, if I were to do a diagnostics and say these are things I should probably start looking into, and if on my team side, like the people that I'm responsible for, are there things, characteristics, or whatever that if I do see, I should start investigating at the very least to say, okay, maybe I should start seeing if there are corrections needed as opposed to it's a nothing burger, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, all of the HR buttons, right? Um, your regular run of the mill, not engaged, performance issues, difficulties with different personality types, um, ego trips, lack of progression, all of those things would be hot buttons. It, in this industry, we tend to promote people based upon time spent instead of business acumen, right? Um, there really is, there really are certain key factors that we would want to look at. Um, if people are showing certain skills, we would want to develop them more, right? So it would depend on the dynamics of your organization, but if you see people who are willing and going above and beyond without having to be asked, so showing initiative is a great identifier for a good attribute. Um, on same token, the opposite is true, that you would find someone who's not progressing or not interested in leadership. Those are your 9 to 5ers, right? The it's you got it, right? I'm here for the paycheck, and that's about it. But also, as very simple as asking somebody's intention. We do this thing where we like expect people to progress, and if they don't progress the same way as everybody else, then they're not good for us. And that's a mindset. That's a culture. So I think you have to kind of, to your initial point, like get all of those things in line, right? Um, and decide what is important to your organization, and then look for those attributes. Not everybody could be a leader. If you had a company full of leaders and no one else would do the work, you'd fail, right? So there's got to be some kind of mix. And typically, bosses, to your earlier point, a boss that delegates all of the work will likely need someone to do the work. So they're not going to develop someone that looks like them. They're going to partner with someone that complements them. So all of these things, all of these dynamics, really require kind of a skill set audit and then an understanding of what's missed or mismatched and going from there. But there are certainly, if you want to get really granular, the question of is leadership innate or can it be taught? Because I think that that's kind of in a way where you're going. And academic Rachel would like to say it could certainly be taught. But I have seen some really young people show the signs of leadership early on. And to that point, they just have it, right?
To high performing individuals. I mean, we're talking about like the top, let's call it 10%, right? And then we have the middle of the road, better than average. For me, that I think a lot of people try to poo poo that, right? But I think there are great leaders, and I mean, so there's some people where just like, look, there's something innate in them where I can't fathom a reality where that was taught, right? I think there's some, but again, I think a lot of us tend to beat ourselves up of like, well, I'm not gonna be that person, so like, why would I try? I'm like, dude, understand that in a lot of places the bar is set really low, and what an actual leader is. I'm talking about a leader, not a boss. To your point, right? And this goes right in line with, do you have a job or a career, right? A job, you show up, you punch in, you punch out, you don't care, you leave, right? As opposed to a career, as some people I would hear like, hey, this isn't a career, this is ridiculous. So I'm like, hey, do you enjoy what you do? Are you good at it? And do you invest a lot of time to hone a craft so that you could do better, whether it's financially or whatever? Like, yes, then that's your career, right? Well,
Mhm.
people don't see it that way. Well, it's occurred to you, and I don't want to demean that just because your parents said it was ridiculous that you wanted to get into, serving at a restaurant, for instance. That leads somewhere, right? Again, with
Yeah.
where your intentions lie. And for me, I guess that's where it is. Like, would it be a safe argument to at least say you may not be, again, the top 1% of leaders in the world, but can you at least be intentional and become an exceptional leader? Would you say that's a reasonable expectation, or is it still hard?
Yeah. So no, no, no. I think that a lot of people work on that. I think that a lot of people, especially in this community, that are put in a position, right? So elevated to partner, elevated to director, manager, and then are now given all of these lives to manage. And if they see people failing, they may then retool themselves to learn more about people. If they see people are not progressing technically, they may retool to earn those skills, to develop their people on a technical aspect. Those are signs of good leadership, right? Recognizing your team and moving forward with them. Um, so I do believe that true leaders are challenged with who they have to manage, and it's a lot of mirror work where you're just looking back to say, do I have it? Is this the right skill set that is necessary and needed for these people to want to embrace my leadership style? Um, and and that's the hard work, right? It's mindful work, it's intentional work. It really does. It really does require the leader to be introspective frequently, and to actively pursue characteristics and attributes that will help them be more productive.
That hits me for some reason. I mean,
It's because it's hard work. I mean, we go through our day to day without stopping to think about leadership. Very few people, I mean, a handful of people, a percentage of people would be would would carve out the time to really look at this and think of it as a model or a procurement of skill sets or actionable intentional goals for themselves to become a better leader. You don't see these on goals and objectives frequently, um, but they they should be there if the expectation is a requirement.
true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to put out a hypothetical. we have we have a person who decided to take on a director, partner, whatever, like higher level role because the paycheck is good, the benefits are great, and then you step into the role and realize, oh dear God, I have no people skills. Like I have no people leading skills. I took this job because they were offering me $300,000 plus bonuses and incredible benefits. Holy crap, what do I do? Like, would
On the company for promoting them. That's the Peter principle, right? We promote people further than they are capable of doing the job. So I mean, the first skill set that a quality leader would need to really explore and implore is communication. And I don't mean just like how I'm talking to you today. I don't mean just, you know, a pressured speech or a consistent tone. Um, it is executive presence, and it is communication style, and it is active listening and understanding to learn and negotiating skills and learning cues and body language. That is, and I'm just getting started on that, but that's just like the bandwidth of communication. Now, if you, a lot of people may take some improv classes to kind of understand this a little bit better. That's one of the great ways to develop the skills. Just like anything, to reps, right? To be an expert at something, you have to have 100,000 reps. There's like some mathematical equation. You have to have this many experiences and this much practice to yield expert level. You have to be put in the situations to lead, to fail, to learn. If you're not given the experiences to see what you need, you're never going to know. Yeah.
I think this is where I find it almost impossible for me to like I guess it's just the way my brain works. I typically tend to lean into things that bleed into other facets of life, and and for me, I guess this is where things like parenthood, I put it akin to mentorship and leadership in general because there, the way we grew up, there were a lot of kids that we grew up with, where I never had this type of role model. And so how do you expect me to fill this, now that I'm a parent, it's how do I show up as a parent when there may have been some deficits in my upbringing? And for me, my response has always been, it's your focus and intentional efforts to take what you do or what you had and what you didn't have. At the very least, that's a baseline. And then secondly, for me was, well, I have experienced other families. I have, and just like I've seen other bosses, right? I've seen other people operate, and it's not necessarily that, hey, that wasn't my direct supervisor, but I used to take note of the things that other people do, and if they somehow magically seem to figure certain things out, this is where, unfortunately, where I start really being that naggy old person to the younger generation. I'm like, look, the people who seem to have it figured out, I promise you, they probably don't entirely, and they got there by making a lot of like mistakes.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about some real basic psychology here, right? So this is self-actualization, it's breaking generational curses, um, and it's truly recognizing it's like muscle memory. Like, what you experienced in your life and behaviors that you have, you will almost always repeat. If you want to find out how someone's going to behave, you just have to look back and see how they behaved in a previous situation, unless they acknowledge it and work towards behavior modification. Behavior modification is the challenge, right? Like smoking cigarettes. I mean, we're now in a generation, most people don't smoke, they all vape. But there was a time period where no one could quit smoking. Many years of my life, no one could quit smoking. It took 12 to 18 weeks to change a behavior. Diets, 12 to 18 weeks to change a behavior. Not now with Ozempic, that's in a day, but everybody else, but these are behavior modifications. And to do that, you need to be self-actualized, which on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the very top, of of the chain. And it takes a long time to get there. I mean, with as many, psych degrees as I have, I work every single day to be self-actualized. I When I know that I'm behaving in a way that is like that muscle memory, like, oh, my mother did that to me. Like, and you reproduce that, or God, I did that in early career. Why am I showing up that way now in this, evolved job that I have in this leadership role? I think we're all going to have those moments, but if you recognize them and put a plan together for yourself to change behaviors going forward, again, I think that the word of the hour is intentional. That's the big deal.
Yeah. And for those who, I mean, obviously, look, you could Google food your way. I think most of us in most of our careers have Google food our way through life, through at least the early phases of our career, at the very least. And at this point, I mean, information is everywhere, right? But with that said, how important do you think, like things like mentors are in this day and age?
Yeah. So, oh, I think they're critical, um, especially now. But I think that there's natural mentors that we find in our lives, um, and then there are mentors that really work on the craft of mentorship with you. And this is a big deal for me, um, because you could have a mentor that's not trained or not given the right skill set, guiding you on a path that is not in your best interest. Um, so I do think it takes some curriculum around a mentorship relationship. Oftentimes I've seen mentors are not trained on how to deal with people. That again, this kind of level of I'm a senior, I should mentor a junior, or I'm a partner and I should mentor a manager. No, you shouldn't. You probably should stay in your office and just do the work and never talk to people, but no one's going to tell you that, because we don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm not about that. I'm about um, finding a person that really cares about you and your development and wants to see the best for you. And sometimes that means telling someone you're not like wrong choice, this CPA industry is not right for you, not right for your personality. These are the expectations and you don't like doing this. It's having hard, difficult conversations with people that might not want to hear it. It's saying, why aren't you working harder? Or this is what I expect of you. Have you ever thought of this? It's creating thought-provoking questions and being available to hearing things that you're not prepared to hear. So I believe in the relationship, but more so I believe in the ability to define those roles and responsibilities in a way that present safe, active, and growth performing um, uh, dichotomy between those two roles.
That is something that has been recurring. Like, it's just, I guess, living rent free in my brain as of late. Because I do see this. I mean, I feel like I see it every few years, but I do again see this resurgence of mentorship programs, and especially in the CPA space. I think partially due to the struggles of like, hey, no one wants to be a CPA anymore, and a lot of people leaving the industry, this, that, and a third. But it does beg the question because, I myself have been in a couple mentorship programs, and lately now I am coming in as a mentor. But the question always resides in my brain of, hey, some of these programs, it almost seems like, hey, if you are senior level of an organization, go ahead and sign up. We'll have a questionnaire, and I'm like, I never really got around to asking like, hey, like, so what is the actual metrics? Like, do you actually filter this through, or is that just is this the information you take just so you can match make with a potential whoever? And I guess that does concern me because a part of me is also that imposter syndrome, right? Like, hey, I do want to do my best to, at least as far as I am aware, to do the best on behalf of them. And quite frankly, there was, for instance, if I just want to be a little more specific, there was one mentee he was like, "Hey, I'm in college because I feel like I have to, right?" But honestly, I went through finance because I felt like it makes sense. I don't see myself in this at all. And for me, I'm like, look,
How do you respond to that, right? So what does a great mentor then do in that moment? And there's also like mentors inside organizations. I feel like oftentimes will feel obligated to do what they think is in the best interest of the company instead of the best interest of their mentee. And so that has to be discussed and vetted in the program, right? I mean, it doesn't serve your mentee very well if you as the mentor are only functioning on behalf of the company. And so there's an underlying layer of what are we really doing here? What's in it for me? Why is this very important? And so it kind of muddies the waters of mentorship. And so I challenge organizations all the time, like are you doing a mentor program just because like your friends are doing it, your competitors are doing it because it's the thing to be had? Or have you really built kind of these parameters to say, in the event that my mentee comes to me and says, I really don't like this, like my parent has chose this career for me, or the only reason why I want to be a CPA is because I've been told that they'll always have a job. What do you do? Yeah, yeah. I mean, but what if you had a mentor that then said to you, well, yes, all of those things are true, but your passion for the work that you do is more important. What's more of a value to you, the person?
and I honestly I could have give you an answer, but at the very least, I think you know, well, I mean, I'll speak personally. There was a part of me that needed validation, right? And so in the back of my head, there were a lot of things where I was just like it was the thing to do. It was the logical next step. And on some level, there was always this bit of, hey, I'm sure if I really pushed, I could do something else. But I think in my young years, I never really understood the value of a true mentor. It wasn't until my much later years, like, hey, look, you are where you are now, and just understand that nothing's permanent. But again, if I had this conversation in my early 20s, then I don't know where I would be at, right? And it is interesting, right? So now again, I think there's in my personal journey, it's always been, I'm gonna try to be the person I wish I had in my young years, right? And it's not necessarily gonna be a mimicry of my exact steps, but at least at the very least of like, hey, I don't know it all at all by any means. However, I can at least tell you what I've seen, and I want to understand where you sit within that. If I can't, if I don't have an experiential thing to input to give you, then I'll at the very least, I promise you, I will find someone who might, right? I think that is more of an
Well, that's very self-actualized, right? So recognizing where you are and recognizing what you have to offer and recognizing that you're taking some of those gold nuggets that you've learned in the past and saying, truly authentically, this is how I'm showing up. This is what I have to offer. Many people don't do that. They wing it, right? It is stressful. Well, I mean that's because you're like the majority of CPAs, right? You don't want to be wrong. You don't want to guide someone incorrectly. You wanted to tie out.
Yep, and I mean, like I keep telling people with the CPA community, our middle name is compliance, and on the back end of that, it's also with compliance comes correct answers, and sometimes there is no correct answer really. I mean, not that you can give, and at the very least, I could walk you through maybe at least getting closer to narrowing down the questions you need to ask, right? And but it starts sometimes it's a cluster F, right? Like sometimes it's like let's unpack things first because tend to I think you know the answer. You're asking me questions. You're waiting for me to say I think that's the answer. But I think we need to clear out some of this noise. And sometimes I feel bad that that's all I can do. But on the back end of that, it's like look if at the very least it removes the noise so that you could at least narrow down your decision, I'll live with that, right? Rather than at least me saying, "Oh, that's the path," and it turned out I'm like, actually that wasn't, and I gave you terrible advice, right? I think that's where I get anxious.
Well, no, I mean, look, you're on a journey of find your why. That's a great journey to be on with everybody. That's a great journey to be on. But people, when you ask those questions and when you unpack and when you peel the onion, all of these things, the layers, um, it's uncomfortable, right? Um, try try really asking someone after they've made a decision, why? Ask them 5 times why. Oh my God, they're gonna wring your neck. They're gonna want to, they're gonna want it. You're done. I'm not answering the why question anymore. But truly, once you're about 3 whys in, you get further into the core of understanding. And that's where the work really happens. That's where leadership work really happens.
That's that is true, and I mean, for me, it's uncomfortable for me too, in that there, because sometimes you see the frustration, and they're like
Mm,
you see them like almost viscerally getting like uncomfortable, and
yeah.
like sometimes, oftentimes there is this moment where they're like, I'm done with this freaking exercise, and honestly, if I'm being honest with myself, there are oftentimes like I don't even know where this is gonna go, but for some reason I don't get the sense that they're getting to the crux of things, and there is one thing that I it's like almost like a hack that someone mentioned, and they said if you could find a way to twist this for the other parts of life, it can be helpful. So, for instance, one thing was this was more of like on a customer retention type thing, of like, hey, go ask them, and like, hey, what am I doing right? And he's like, never focus on the actual answer, as like they think that's what you're great at. That's what they're looking for. That is the rubric in which they're grading you. So for me, if you are talking to a person, it's like, hey, what do you think is going well in your life, or what do you enjoy? What are you enjoying right now? And it might be more of a thing, an indicator, rather than, hey, what should my career path be? Which department should I be the boss of? Like sometimes it's just I think we lose focus, and I think this is where I enjoy conversations with you, because there's a clarity. There's a clarity that comes at, well, first off, throughout the interactions, whether in person or LinkedIn and all this jazz, like I like your energy. Like your energy does bring some level of comfort and confidence, which is interesting. Um, but I think there's a clarity that comes in the way you tend to explain certain things, and it just bring. I enjoy the perspective. I enjoy the perspective that, like, because for me, I could easily be very cynical, right? New York and CPA, so like cynicism is like embedded.
Embedded. Yeah. Yeah. No, I, I believe in this community. It is an unlikely response to what I ever expected my life to bring me to, and it keeps coming back around. I mean, I went to school to be a criminal psychologist, and I'm hanging out with CPAs all the time.
Maybe not too far off.
So yeah, some days. Um, but I I just think there's something so interesting about the CPA community. Um, there is a word I learned early on in my career, while I went to school at John Jay, and it was a course I took on epistemology, and epistemology is the desire to continue to learn. And when you're a CPA, you have signed up for a lifetime of learning. And so I always believe that that's my connection to the community. Um, and, it took me 20 years to have a credential that is equivalent in a way. Um, but, but that desire to always learn, um, matched with choosing what you learn, I think is a critical point. Um, but it has always provided for me in terms of my energy and excitement, a way to really connect with
Mhm.
people in an intelligent community that's service oriented and relationship oriented. Just makes sense for me.
It's interesting you put it that way. I mean, if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that always kind of wondered, of all industries for you to focus on, why CPAs of all, we are certainly not the, if you look at the CPA tropes out there, we are not cuddly, fun loving, people in general. If you think about the stereotypes, and I know that through my interactions, there's certainly a plethora of CPAs who are fun and normal human beings, but it always struck me as curious of like Dr. Anevski's historically very vibrant, very bright, very and she's choosing to jump in with CPAs. That seemed like an odd combo.
Listen, yin and yang,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. And
But
I can't be more glad that you did pick this industry though.
yeah, listen, I makes me feel good to bring a level of understanding into this world, quite honestly. Um, it was the my very first night. I haven't mentioned this in a really really long time, but my job interview with the managing partner in my first CPA firm. Um, I had always had previous to that on my wall a picture of October. So all of the in New Jersey, right? So in on Route 80, and I had taken this picture of all of the leaves changing, and I had written on it the word change. I was 24 years old. And so I had it always behind me in my office. And I went and I interviewed with Ted Dudek, and we talked a lot about change in that interview. And I went back to my office. I grabbed that picture and I gave it to him. And I wonder today, I talked to him the other day, and he's my natural mentor, and the person who taught me train your successor. So all things full circle. But I went back to that office and I grabbed that picture of change and I gave it to him. And for many, many years, he had it up in his office. And so it is it has just been a life's work for me, really, to be in this community, to help influence positive change, to help, as you say, meet people where they are and lead them kind of through business transitions, and what's now transformational leadership.
And yeah, I feel like you are, for me, true leadership for me is an act of service, not a. I know we like to look at it again from like a someone on a pedestal perspective, but I do feel like it's an act of service, and the work that you do it hits deep for me because I think it is such a critical yet understood thing. I think it's something that's definitely fallen to the wayside in a lot of respects. And so the fact that you are putting so much of your time and energy into helping other folks understand that, hey, like there is a path forward. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't have to burn it all down. There's work to be done, and I think there's a revisitation that is required. Right? Again, you guys need to come to the pond. You need to come drink. However, understand that all is not lost. There are, and I think it's also a reminder of like, hey, we have forgotten what's critical here. It's not your time under tension. It's not your tenure here. It's really, have we instilled the right skill sets? And if not, what can we do to course correct? And am I off base here?
1,000%. Nope, you are on track. 1,000%.
At this point, I do apologize. My curiosities have steered away from my other curiosities because you at this point have two books, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm. I do.
Where can we find those? Can we steal them somewhere?
Oh yeah, Amazon. Real easy, right? Train your successor, um, and accounting for times, evolve or dissolve.
I do love that. I if it's okay with you, I think there's going to be some more conversations that we need to have. um, but for now, I don't want to keep you for too much longer. For those who do want to reach out, where can people find you?
Sure. So LinkedIn is my very favorite place to hang out and be. So Dr. Rachel Anevski. I am real easy and responsive at Rachel at mattersofmanagement.com. And hopefully look for me at all of the upcoming CPA conventions. I'm hoping to do a lot of speaking.
Well, I'm certainly going to be pushing you wherever I can because I think the message you again, like I mean, I can't I know I'm fanboying a little bit, but I can't stress it.
Glaze, glaze. I love it.
So, Dr. Anevski, I thank you for your time. And I'll leave
I
the
thank
contact
you.
information and all that jazz in the description somewhere, wherever it is.
Cool beans.